spindle. And before I start, I'm going to pass a few of these around. This is kind of what I'm going to try to make today, just to give you a sense of what I'm going to be making. Okay. Now the tools. The tool that I use most is either a spindle gouge or a detail gouge. Made a small handle for it. It makes it a little bit easier to control. It's ground with a 40-degree bevel grind on it with swept back wings, and the nose has a 1/8-inch diameter curve to it. That seems to allow me to get into tight spots, and the size allows me to move around pretty easily. Yes. Yeah. I forget. It started out with whatever was on here, and then over the period of time, it just evolved. So the wood. Most of the spindles that I make, I usually paint them, so I don't really care that much about the wood as long as it's a tight grain, dry wood. This is a piece of maple from Lowe's, and easy to get to, pretty reliable wood, pretty stable. Stick it in a set of pin jaws, and I've got a dimple at the end, which I centered. And the only reason you do that is just to line it up. This whole thing is turned without a live center. So you try to line it up as best you can. Keep the corners of the wood in the center of the gaps in the pin jaws. And the first thing to do is to make it round. Yes, it's slightly overkill, but you know. Now, while it's in this position, the whole idea behind doing these spindles is to work from the point end down, and to keep as much of the as much wood behind the spindle as you can to give it support. So when you just start, you can take the roughing gouge and trim down the end that's going to be the point, because the wood behind it is going to support it. So we'll just bring that down a little bit. Shit, a little bit high. Now the parts of the spindle that we're going to be working on, there's the point, and then there's the shaft, and this round part is called the onion. What I'd like to do at this point is get the spindle diameter down to about the diameter I want for my onion, because otherwise you're just going to be removing a lot of waste material with a small gouge. So I'll just take that down. Okay. I think that's enough. Okay. And now we start forming the point. Now, there's a hole here where the dimple was and where the cone center was, so got to get the point beyond that. Okay. Okay, there's the point. What I'm going to do now is cut a V groove just beyond the point, which will allow me to do a bead at the back of the point, back of the cone. Now you can do this with a skew, which is probably the safest way to do it. Just enter and raise the tail. I'm going to do it with this, and hopefully you got to hold it right. You have to have the flute completely closed, and it has to be absolutely vertical, otherwise it'll skate, and it probably will, but we'll see what happens. Yep, there it goes. Okay, and then we just round over the back of the point. See, just a little bead. Okay. Now we start to sand. This is pretty smooth right now, so I'm just going to use 220 and then 400. Now again, you do this as you go, because once you're beyond it, you can't go back. That's right. Yep. Once you do this, that's it. You can't come back to this. You get the shape you like. Okay. All right. I'm not sure. I can't. I think I'm planing. I don't think I'm scraping. Part of it is because we're way out at the end of this thing, so you're hearing the vibration, you're always going to get that rattling. I don't. I don't. 1700 RPM. And you could go faster. It's just I don't like to change the pulleys, you know. I like this way, wrapping your fingers around it and supporting the back. It gives you more control of the tool, but it also, once you get to, when this thing gets really thin, it gives it a little extra support. Just take a little bit at a time. And again, whoops, you go 3/4 of an inch or so. $150, $220, $400. Okay. This is the part of the turning that you can make it as skinny and as long as you dare. I'm not going to go much further than this because I've blown too many of these up in front of everybody. I can't do that. Another thing is, not afraid to sand this. You can actually adjust the diameter when you get really down small, you know, with some 100 grit sandpaper, and it does take all the bumps out. You see, I'm just supporting the back end with my finger. You can actually see I'm getting more of a taper there. It's a little hard to say. It's kind of whatever looks good. I don't really have any formula that I use for that. I mean, some of the finials are just ridiculously long with a little bitty onion. Some have an onion that starts not far from the point and just tapers all the way down. You know, you experiment on a few things, see what what looks good. It also depends on what you're mounting it to. If you're mounting it to like a ball ornament or something. Well, I'm sorry. If you mount it to like a bowl ornament or something, you can have a long teardrop of a spike coming down. If you're doing it on the top of a box, it may be something a little bit squatter, something like that. I am getting some vibration here, so one of the things that can help with that is I chuck a piece of plastic tubing into the end of a Jacob's chuck. Now this doesn't have to be. This chuck actually has a bearing in it, but it doesn't really matter. A regular chuck will do it because you're not actually going to turn this. It's just going to capture the point. You don't even actually want it to touch. You just want it to touch when it's moving. So you just kind of very. You need. Sure. Yeah. Any kind of thing with a hole in it that allows you to. Yeah, it's just a piece of. I got it at Lowe's. It's a, I think it's quarter-inch tubing. That'll just hold it together. Okay, again, just working your way down from the end. Okay, we'll take it right up to 400. Okay. Now I'm going to start on the onion, and really it's just a gradual taper. And it's actually going to end up slightly concave. So it's a slight cove. Yeah, it's sounding a little less like scraping now because it's captured at the end. Okay. You always say you sand at a slower speed, but 1700 RPM is fine for this because the distance, the amount of wood that's passing over the sandpaper, because everything is so narrow, is you wouldn't do this with a bowl, but something this narrow, you're not really generating a lot of friction. You can finish them up with like 1,000 and just do it by hand very gently on the CA, and then well, I'll talk about finishing in a minute, but after you do the CA, what I like to do is give them a coat of lacquer. But using the CA as a base, it's really smooth and really you wouldn't know it from having done ebony or something. Now, this is a little bumpy, but yeah, leave it at that. Okay. Now we're going to do another V groove and form another bead at the end of the onion. And again, I'll be oops. Oops. Okay. And then you again, just turn the bead. Now turning a bead, anytime you turn a bead, always start on the outside corner and work your way in to the radius. Something a lot of people do that I did for a long time and had a lot of trouble with it is you start at one end and you're going to take the whole radius off. You got to kind of sneak up on it and just take a little off at a time. Like that. Okay. Sand this out. Okay, now we do the base. The base is a cove. It's very similar to what's here up underneath the point. And we'll just start down here and start working our way in. Sorry. Safety first. You always want to be going downhill. Okay. And we'll pull this back a little bit. Okay. I'll take more of that off. And now we make now we make the tenon to fit into whatever it is you're going to mount it to. First thing is to kind of part off the bottom of the finial. I used to just come at this with like a small parting tool, but I found that tore up the edge right there. So I like to just use a skew, and again, just another little V groove. That's it, and that's a nice crisp edge on the right there. And then you take the parting tool, and I'm going to make a 1/4 inch tenon on this. Use a pair of calipers. I set this at 1/4 inch by grabbing a 1/4 inch drill bit with it and just setting it that way, and then backing it off just a little bit because you want it to slip in. It's very frustrating when it almost fits. So the way I found out how to do that is if it is too fat, put it in a Jacob's chuck and crank it down a few times, and you'll actually squeeze it small enough so you can fit it in the hole. And you just keep doing this until the calipers slips over the tenon. Just like that. Okay. And the last thing is that because this thing is going to sit most likely on a round surface, you want the edge of the bottom of the finial to sit on top of that ball. So you need to kind of relieve the bottom. And the way I do that is I take the skew, using it as a scraper, and I come in just under the edge you get the recess. Are you interested in watching me finish this? Okay, all right. Me too.
By the way, that's not a judgment on you. It's all like, I got it.
It's like, I know, it's like I can breathe now. All right. All right. Let me.
I'm just thinking if I were doing this, it would be weight. Well, like I said, the one time happens, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Not a big mess.
Lower them. I'm just going to put some CA on it, so I don't want it flying around at 1700. I'm going to bring it down to, well, as slow as it'll go, which is I think 200 here. This is thin. It's heavy thin. What am I doing? I don't really need that. Take this off. All right. Just run it up and down. What I'll do is I'll fold that over. Yeah, for thin CA glue, this is awfully thick. I don't know why. And I just do a couple of coats. And again, you can sand, again, very carefully without breaking anything. You can sand afterwards. Okay. And that's basically it. Then we just part it off. Now, again, I like to use a skew and just use a V groove to cut it off. You know, you always end up shredding the end of the the tenon when you're using a parting tool, a parting tool. So again, just a little. There it is.